the process to get everything forgiven is pretty simple nowadays, but they're still, with anything that has to deal with the government, there are also complexities. So basically, the big thing with PPP forgiveness for those of us who are sole proprietors, independent contractors, solo agents, solopreneurs, where no legal entity is being utilized. You either haven't graduated to the legal entity or you just don't have one in place for whatever reason. Um, if you're someone that reports all of your income and expenses on Schedule C, the great update here is that 100% of your loan is going to be forgiven, regardless of how you spend the money. They're just going to basically basically what the government's going to do is, if you're a Schedule C solopreneur, solo agent, they're just going to assume you use that money they're calling it compensation replacement. So the money that they've given you, they're going to already assume that you're just going to spend it to stimulate the economy, which was the whole aspect of a stimulus. So they're not really going to be looking into how you spent it so much. 100% of it is going to be viewed as owner's compensation, and basically 100% of your loan is going to be forgiven. The big thing that you have to be aware of, even though if you're a Schedule C business owner, yes, your loan is 100% forgiven basically off the bat once you get the money funded, and who cares how you spend it. But you still have to submit the PPP forgiveness application. So that's a big, as far as doing this day in and day out, that's a big misconception. People think that they don't have to file the application. No, you still have to file the application with your bank. There's a lot of rumblings going on in terms of this. Congress wants to basically get everyone that's a solopreneur, a Schedule C contract. They just want to automatically forgive everyone, and they want to have a streamlined forgiveness application that's very simple. But you still need to submit that forgiveness application to your bank. So majority of the banks and the SBA have already opened up the portals to submit those forgiveness applications. You'll want to get up to date on that forgiveness application, either with your accountant or whoever you're working with, your bank. Figure out how you can fill that application out. They're trying to make it more simple, but it's still pretty complex. They're trying to make it more simple. But the good news in all of this is, if I'm a Schedule C business owner and I got funded the PPP funds, 100% of that loan, regardless of how I spent it, is forgiven. You don't have to worry about the whole 60%, 75% towards paying myself, 25% towards rent and all that other stuff, all that mumbo jumbo. 100% forgiven, regardless of how much you spent it. Basically, they gave you the money, and you very likely spent it on continuing your business and also personal expenses, and you've stimulated the economy, okay? You have until 12/31/20 to spend the money and then also get the forgiveness application situated. So 12/31 to spend the money, okay? Next, basically, slide we have is more for the business entities. Okay, if you're a business entity, you've graduated to an entity, an S corporation, C corporation, an LLC that's taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation. And typically, you should, for those of you who have looked into entities, really once you've crossed that $100,000 a year threshold, when you're doing that consistently, when you're making six figures consistently, the first thing you should really look into is an entity. If for those of you who are wondering, but if you have an entity, it's still complex. It's very complicated how you spend the money. Really, if you have an entity, you need to be working with your accountant to make sure you're spending the money correctly, because that forgiveness application is no joke, and they're already preparing us to dispute the SBA in terms of people who submit applications that maybe they did it wrong. But it's really difficult, the rules. It's almost, for me, an accountant, an owner of a CPA firm, it gets pretty overwhelming sometimes. But here's the nuts and bolts of it. 60% of your payroll, 60% of your PPP loan, at least 60% needs to be spent on payroll. And then the remaining 40% can be spent on rent and utilities. Utilities they've updated the definition. Utilities is electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, and internet access. Now, if you're someone, all of this rent and utilities, that has to be for dedicated business rent and dedicated business utilities. If you're using a home office, that does not qualify. So you would have to kind of figure out how much money you're spending maybe on telephone and internet access. Maybe those aren't necessarily your cell phone, that would qualify, and then your internet. But any type of home office expenses, rent, those do not qualify. So, you might want to need to look to see how you might want to pivot from that. Maybe you're gonna do 100% of the PPP money to payroll to pay yourself. I don't know, but you need to make sure that you're spending the money correctly. I don't know how many people have reached out to us. The money has been spent only for them, only for us to tell that person who's already spent the money, unfortunately, you did not spend the money correctly, so you're not going to qualify for 100% forgiveness. You're only qualifying for 70% forgiveness. I don't know how many times that's happened so far. So make sure you're working with someone that's giving you guidance on how the money is spent, so you're set up for success in terms of this whole forgiveness application. And again, you have to apply for the forgiveness, and you have 24 weeks through 12/31 to spend the money. There's two big reductions. There's two big factors. They will look at how much money you are spending on payroll for those of us who have employees. If you're someone that has a team and you have employees on staff, it gets even more complex. I'm not going to really get into those two main factors because very likely the majority of people here don't have employees. A lot of us here are solopreneurs, or if you have an entity, you're the only quote-unquote employee. But the two big factors, those of us who have employees, they're going to look at how much in payroll you had prior to COVID and how much in payroll you had after you got funded for the PPP. There can be potential reductions in your forgiveness application depending on if you let someone go and didn't hire them back. So they're going to look at how much money you were spending pre-COVID and post-PPP funding, and they're also going to look at your head count. How many people did you have before COVID in terms of head count, and how many people did you get back in terms of head count once the PPP money has been funded? So again, it's really complex. Those of us who have business entities, make sure you're getting advice, okay? This is a really good time frame just so that people are aware as far as how long it's going to take for this whole forgiveness application. So let's say you got the loans dispersed, okay? You have a covered period. Essentially, they've given us 24 weeks now through 12/31/20. Before it used to be 8 weeks. Now it's 24 weeks. 24 weeks or 12/31/20, whatever comes first. You essentially have through the end of the year to spend the money correctly, okay? So once 12/31/20 hits, the covered period is over. So again, they've expanded it from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. After 12/31/20, you have up to 10 months, all right? Plenty of time to submit that loan forgiveness application. So, in all reality, you have until October 31st, 2021 to actually get around to submitting the forgiveness application. For us, how we're operating right now is there's been so many changes. We're already on our third revision of that forgiveness application. So this is the third application that we've had to learn. So we're just applying right now for people who qualify for forgiveness and have already exhausted the money. So if you've already spent the money and you spent the money correctly, I would apply right now as soon as possible before they make further changes, before they make another form. If you qualify for forgiveness, get that application in now so you don't have to worry about it. But you're going to have up to 10 months, plenty of time. When you submit the loan forgiveness application, your lender, your bank, the people who lent you the money, which is the bank, they have 60 days to submit it to the SBA. Okay, so let's just say I submitted my application today, 8/17/2020. My bank, Bank of America, for me, they have 60 days, which is essentially going to be 10/17, to submit the loan to the SBA. Then the SBA has 3 months, 90 days to make a decision, to basically tell you and your bank, yes, you qualify for 100% forgiveness. No, unfortunately, only 75% of your loan is going to be forgiven. So you can just look at this timeline. Once you submit the application, 60 days for the lender to submit to the SBA, and then 90 days for the SBA to make a decision. You're looking at 150 days from the day you submit the application, almost 6 months before you actually get that decision made. So again, apply as soon as possible so you're at the front of the line, because 150 days, 6 months, that's a lot of anxiety, in my opinion, to be waiting to figure out whether or not I'm actually getting true forgiveness or not, and then what that percentage is. What's not shown here just to make you guys aware, is once the SBA makes a decision, you then have 30 days if you don't agree with the decision to dispute. So, if you're running, if you run into a situation where you don't agree with the SBA's decision, and now it's another 30 days, now you're really at 6 months from start to finish in terms of getting this loan forgiven. So this is the timeline. Long process, you guys. Hopefully they can speed this up, but it's going to be a ton of people applying for forgiveness. I can only imagine how much paperwork that is. It's going to take a long time to get that final decision. Okay, what if I got both a PPP loan and an EIDL, economic injury disaster loan? So just to let you guys know, it's okay if you got both the Paycheck Protection Program loan and the economic injury disaster loan. My business, my firm, we got both. All right, so no problem if you have both of those. The only interaction that occurs is that advance, that EIDL advance, up to $10,000, $1,000 per employee. That ran out of money like a month ago, but you want to look at this middle point here. So let's say I applied for that economic injury disaster loan and I got $5,000, okay? Then I applied, well, actually this example right here, I got $8,000 of the EIDL grant and I got a $138,000 PPP loan. Understand that $8,000 grant, that's factored into the forgiveness application. Essentially, you can't get both. You can't get both the grant and 100% of your PPP loan forgiven. Your PPP loan is only going to be eligible for $130,000 of loan forgiveness. So they're gonna subtract however much you got in the advance grant from your PPP loan, and that's going to impact your PPP forgiveness. So make sure you're aware of that, all right? So if I got a grant, that's going to come into play in terms of my forgiveness. So in this situation, $8,000 of this PPP loan will not be forgiven. So either you're going to give that money back to the bank or you're going to convert it into a loan. But there's no problem if you have both the economic injury disaster loan and the PPP loan. Okay, that's a big misconception. The only interaction is whether or not you got the advance grant, okay? That's pretty much the updates with how everything's flowing right now with the PPP and the EIDL. Obviously, the PPP loan that has it's no longer in existence. It expired August 8th. The economic injury disaster loan through the SBA, you can literally go Google SBA economic injury disaster loan. You'll go straight to the SBA's website, and they'll give you. It's really simple to apply for that now. One of our clients applied and they got a decision within like 2 hours of applying on how much they qualified for. And then after signing the loan documents and getting everything taken care of, they got funded. It was like $100,000 like within a week. So you can literally in the same day right now, you can find out how much you would qualify for in terms of the SBA economic injury disaster loan. Incredible loan, 3.75% interest. Payback period up to 30 years, so the interest rate is practically free money. It's just enough for the government to keep up with inflation, that's money that's available. But understand that economic injury disaster loan that's still available, it's a traditional loan. You have to pay it back, but the terms are incredible. You can find out same day how much you qualify for, and you can be potentially funded within 1 week, right? If you're looking for cash flow right now. But what's in store coming up next? So we've been following this whole Congress fight that they have going on right now on this next stimulus package. The only thing that they really agree on right now is that they agree that more money needs to go to business owners and more money needs to go to households. They're disputing basically everything else. That they're arguing over how much money should go to schools and all this other stuff. So I would expect it's not going to be by the end of this month, but very likely by the end of next month that something is going to pass for a second round of funding for PPP loans, okay? So what it's looking like is the second round of forgivable PPP loans is going to be for business owners that can demonstrate that their gross income, total income, has reduced between 25 and 50%. So they're going to look at Q1 19 last year, and then they're going to look at Q1 20. Can you demonstrate a 25 to 50% decrease in total income? They're also going to allow you to look at Q2 19 in comparison to Q2 20. What do those numbers look like? Did you experience a 25 to 50% decrease? That's essentially the threshold that they're going to go off of. They're trying to figure out if they're going to use 50% decrease or a 25% decrease, but it's going to be somewhere within that type of percentage of a decrease range. So it's not going to necessarily going to be everyone qualifies for it. Only people who can demonstrate this decrease, the people who really need the money, essentially. So it looks like a second forgivable round of PPP loans is going to happen. It's just a matter of Congress agreeing and something getting signed off by Trump. All right. And then they want to throw more low interest SBA traditional loans. One senator in like New Hampshire or something like that, some state that, some state on the East Coast, and it's getting a whole lot of traction. He wants to do a 1% fixed annual interest with a payback period between 20 to 30 years to cover up to 2 years of a company's gross revenue. So that's way better than this SBA loan. So that's something that very likely it's getting a lot of traction. So I wouldn't be surprised if that goes through as well. And then a second round of stimulus checks for households. That's what it looks like. The only agreement that's going on in terms of the talks within Congress on the next round of stimulus. Okay. Last page is basically if you need help or assistance with qualifying for the forgiveness application. So right now we've just processed I made this over the weekend, but like we're at 3.5 million already in PPP loan forgiveness applications as of over the weekend that we've already consulted on. They qualify for 100% forgiveness. Forgiveness application is done, and either we're waiting to submit it to the bank, or the bank has opened up the portal for application and we've already gotten that submitted. So we've really become experts in this arena. We've really been tracking this since this came to an existence in April, and we've been following this pretty darn good. I have across the hall from us, there's a CPA firm, really good CPA. He's actually helped us out with a couple of things just because he has way more experience than we do. He's really good with handling the IRS and audits. But he's 65, and he hasn't had his business open since March. He's not really advising on PPP. He doesn't have a clue about it. So make sure you're working with someone that understands the ins and outs on all of this. It's very important because we're talking about free money here if we file this application correctly. That's the whole goal, is 100% forgiveness. So if your accountant necessarily isn't up to date because it's a ton of stuff to learn, maybe seek out an accountant that kind of maybe a little bit younger that's been following this from start to finish. So what we're doing on our end is if you're a Schedule C solo agent, you're 100% forgiveness. We're charging $850, and we're basically going to be able to oversee this for you over the 3 to 6 month process for forgiveness. So our fee is $850 if you want to go with us to prepare the forgiveness application. And then also, if you're an entity holder, we charge a little bit more just because the application is a little bit more harder. We're charging $950 plus an additional $250 for each employee that is not the business owner. So if you're someone that has 2 or 3 employees, it's going to be $950 plus $750 for us to do it for you. And that's all revolving around the fact that they're going to really look at how many employees you had to start the year and how many employees did you have once you got funded when you had the PPP money and how you spent it. So that's how much we're charging over here. The market agrees with it. Happy to what we can do for those of us who are maybe this is something that's out of your ballpark range. I'll put my contact information. If you can shoot us a quick email, we're doing our best we can. We're doing a pretty good job at it. We can probably just at the very least point you in the right direction. But the really good news, though, is really this first page here, the sole proprietors, that 100% forgiveness, which is the majority of people probably on this call. It's just a matter of doing that application correctly and waiting. It looks like you're going to have 100% forgiveness. So that's pretty much my, the whole Paycheck Protection Flexibility Act, all 150 pages of it, summed up into 5 pages. Happy to hang out for a little bit, answer any questions people might have. If you guys have any information, I'll go ahead and leave my contact information here so that way you guys can get in contact. So you can reach out to info@VazquezandFamilyInc.com, or you can call or text us 714-440-4839. 714-440-4839. And then my assistant, her name is Erin. So Erin's going to pick up and she will be able to take your information and then we'll get back to you. Just understand that the amount of people reaching out to us and all of this stuff that's going on, I just can't handle everything one by one. But I have a really good team in place. Then we can, at the very least, point you in the right direction if you have any questions. But I can hang out for about 10, 15 minutes if you guys want to hang out and ask any questions that you might have. A couple of questions that are in the chat I can see already. Alan is asking, what can one do if he signed the DocuSign people on the deadline of August 8th if the lender has not funded the loan in time? Now, we've had a couple of these people kind of like last minute rush to it. I don't think so we applied on like August 8th, like literally the day of the deadline. I don't think anyone that we applied on 8/8 has gotten funded yet. We're still in the process of getting all the documents signed so that they can get funded. So, other people that we are working with, we're on the same boat as you. We're kind of waiting for the funding. So, the deadline to apply was August 8th. That wasn't necessarily the deadline to get funded. So it's just a matter of waiting a little bit longer, very likely, to get the funding in. So your money's on your way, Alan. There was still $150,000 of PPP money available at the deadline. What they're going to do with that, I'm not sure, but great question. Any other questions anyone might have regarding this whole Paycheck Protection Program, economic injury disaster loan, stimulus checks? I'm more than happy to answer them, you guys. All right. Well, if we don't have too many questions, this is something we can kind of close on out here. I'll hang out for another 5-10 minutes in case anyone has questions, and then if not, feel free to reach out. Yeah, Alan, you're okay here. It sounds like you're okay. You applied and signed and approved on August 8th. It sounds like you're just waiting for the money to hit your bank account. There's really nothing you can do there outside of wait. If you got if you got some sort of email or notification that says that you don't qualify, well, the lender is saying that you missed the deadline. Ugh, that's tough. That's tough. I don't understand why you're getting that. But as far as what I'm seeing here, we have other people in the same situation where we applied the day before. I'm not sure, Alan. It sounds there's really no recourse here. They extended the deadline multiple times, but unfortunately they didn't extend it past August 8th. It looks like you did everything right on your end. The only option that I can think of is calling the SBA and seeing if you can get through to someone there and figuring out what happened, because it looks like you did everything on your own. So I would try to get a hold of the SBA. Is there a good number for SBA? Yeah, you probably could just Google that. I'm sure there's a direct line there, an 800 number at least. I don't know the number off the top of my head. All right. Well, I think this is a great update for everyone. Everyone that's a Schedule C owner, 100% forgiveness. All those rules don't necessarily apply to you anymore. That's probably a weight off a lot of people's shoulders. Now it's just a matter of moving to getting those applications done and filed. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. If not, it looks like we're pretty much done here in terms of moving on to the next task of the next task of the day. So Hallie, if you have any, Hallie, you go ahead and upload this, and we can go ahead and close this out. So I'm gonna take off, Hallie. This went really well, really good attendance, and thanks a lot for having us. Take care, everyone.